respond to characters more than even the plot sometimes. They are willing to forgive you a scene or two which may be boring if they're in love with that character. So when I was writing Thappad, I asked my maid, I was like, what do you think of a girl leaving her husband because he slapped her? She just started laughing. She's like, you've got to be kidding me. Writers should not be made to narrate.
Oh, really?
Nowadays, a performance is expected.
Yeah.
And there's good reason why I stopped acting. I'm not going to perform for anybody.
Hi everyone, welcome to TCP Originals presents Right Here, Right Now, a show where we talk to screenwriters about screenwriting. I am Parzan Dastur and today we have Mrunmayee Lagoo Waikul, co-writer of Thappad and Scoop. Hi Mrunmayee, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Parzan.
Let's start from the beginning, Mrunmayee. I wanted to know, like, there must have been a moment maybe in your childhood where you said, I'm good at this thing called writing. Like, was there any moment like that?
Yeah, very vividly I remember. We were asked to write a poem about the rain. So I was in a boarding school in Panchgani. So I can't give any marks for originality to that teacher. It was raining outside. So I went and wrote it and it was very much appreciated. Most kids, most of the girls and boys had not written any poems. So over the next few days I was writing for them. So I kind of knew that I understand this.
That's so
and
sweet.
I get appreciated quite a bit. At that time it was all rhyme.
Yeah, of course. And then, of course, later it culminated to a career in acting and all of that. You've been a daughter of a legendary actor, a writer. You spoke so sweetly in other interviews about the support that they gave also. They never really pressurized you into doing anything, which is really nice of them. So then an AD career was inevitable because let's learn what.
Absolutely.
Because you've AD'd Rajkumar Hirani for almost 3 films.
So 3 Idiots, PK
and
I think that's it.
That's it.
2
So,
films,
what is it about him as a writer that really according to now that you have written and now that you've evolved as in your career, what is it about him as a writer that's really like can touch the pulse of our Indian audiences, because he's done phenomenally well in so many movies and that's understating his achievements.
You know, I'm not even going to try to attempt to guess what it is because I don't even think he knows. All I can say about him as a writer is that I have not met a more hardworking writer than him.
Lovely.
He used to be writing non-stop the whole time, but that is before we went into shoot. And another thing he was fabulous at that he would always want feedback from everybody. So whatever rewrites he would do, he would make the entire AD team sit, all the HODs, and he would read out to them everything and he would take feedback.
That's fantastic.
And since I was working more like a trainee, DA, AD, everything, I used to spend some time with him. So he always told me that for me, it takes me a week to kind of let the feedback settle. You know, because first couple of days, it's a bit like, you know, okay, we've done all this is what they're saying. There's a dissonance going on. But after a week, you kind of know what you want, what doesn't need to be there, or what some of it meant, which was not maybe articulated properly, but they were trying to say this. So now when I get feedback, first of all, I'm very open to feedback. I like people reacting to what I've done. It's not a secret which I like, you know, hold close to my heart. I just keep narrating, giving it out to anyone who wants it. And after I get feedback, I allow myself some time to process it. Even though instinctively I know, this is, I didn't think of this. You know instinctively, but even so I allow some time for it to settle before like immediately starting changing anything.
Absolutely.
You know, because I think those knee-jerk reactions can just take your script in some different level if you have not thought things through. And then to come back from it, it's one big bharta.
So is it an ego thing then that you try to keep your ego aside? Are you saying there is no ego? One mustn't keep an ego when
No, you can't not have an ego because the degrees of ego can vary, but everyone will have an ego. I think what one must understand is people giving you feedback, whatever their agenda is, we don't know. But if you can take it, it's just going to enrich what you are doing. At the end of the day, it's your credit. At the end of the day, it's a film, a show that's going to work or not work. So I am extremely selfish about that, you know, for the lack of any other better word. I love feedback in the sense that, you know, there are places where I know I'm stuck. So why not, you know?
That was my next question. Who are these people who you trust to give you good feedback? But you're saying there
Anybody.
shouldn't be anyone
Like
you should limit.
from my maid to my driver to my husband to my dad to my closest friends, they are all audience, no?
Absolutely.
You know, so I mean, everyone's going to watch your stuff, and at least that's the dream.
Fair.
Even though I keep getting pulled into like this evolved niche cinema because of the people I ended up writing for.
Sure.
Even so, I would want my audience to be everyone.
Sure,
you
of
know.
course.
So when I was writing Thappad, I asked my maid, I was like, listen, what do you think of a girl leaving her husband because he slapped her? She just started laughing. She's like, you've got to be kidding me. You know, how can she just walk out on one slap? This way, so no marriage in India will survive.
Which is something you address also.
Yeah, which is, I mean, a very legit reaction, you know. So, they're all audience, and I think the more the merrier for me,
Lovely.
for feedback.
Lovely. So, and then you joined a place which where you read
Films.
scripts,
Yeah.
and so that's really interesting now because today so many writers are sending in their scripts
Yeah.
and sending in their stuff. So, what are those rooms like?
The first thing I learned about a good script is engagement. You know, no matter what your subject is, no matter how ridiculous your climax is, you have to have the ability to get the reader till the climax.
Yeah.
You know, so engagement has to be there.
Yeah.
If I'm shutting a script in 5 pages, it is, I don't care what the next 90 pages are.
And interesting, you said reader, not watcher, because we're still on.
We're still on reading.
On reading,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because, I mean, it's a sad truth that very few people in our industry who are on this side where they are reading and approving and all of that, very few of them have the imagination to take their reading and imagine it for a screen. Whether it is your series, whether it is your films. You know, most of them cannot. And those are the people we have to deal with.
Fair enough.
So the only way to get your script across if it is ridiculously engaging.
Got it.
And I would go so far as to say that if you want, just tweak it for the studio. Because for some of them, you just have to make the writing interesting. It doesn't matter whether that writing does not translate. You can describe a person's mental thing because you want to grab the studio.
Okay.
The director is going to kill you for it.
Yes.
He's like, ये कैसे दिखाऊं मैं?
Yes, it's
I'm
not
like, but it's not
visually-
for you.
yeah.
It's for them to get the script. Then we'll
Got
remove
it.
all this.
Got it.
You know, most
Got it.
people. So I would do that. You
Okay.
know, because I need them on board.
Yes.
So I would like make it as gripping as possible using whatever tools of writing I had with me.
But then you have to remove those portions
Oh,
from
for
this
sure.
thing because
For
they have
sure.
to be translatable.
Of course.
What did you learn in this process not to do? Because I'm sure, and I need an honest answer, I'm sure you read scripts which were not good
Yeah,
at all.
of course.
How was, and that must have been torturous.
I mean, few takeaways were that, you know, don't try to make your script different just because. You know, it does not work. You can't decide to make a shirt which does not look like a shirt because then it will be interesting.
Okay.
People will just be confused. They're like, is this a shirt or what is it?
Okay.
You know, if it is going to be interesting, let it be organically so. Don't do some atrangi nonsense that you have been inspired by from some different world which doesn't belong in your script. Another thing was, yes, we all watch foreign cinema, we are all very inspired by it, but you need to adapt it to here. You can't be a fan of Tarantino and do what he does here in just one sequence in your entire film, because that is just going to stick out like one ad film in the middle of a film.
Okay.
You know, like your own personal promo and homage to Tarantino.
Yeah.
So those things do not work. Another is, a lot of people think that, you know, if they love writing dialogues, the script can just be carried on dialogues. While it's true, for some part, people do respond to dialogues better than a lot. Like, you know, if you have a dialogue heavy script, it gets read faster because it's a breeze.
Yes.
Versus an action heavy film, when action I don't mean stunts, I just mean more descriptive and cinematic than verbose. It's difficult to read.
Yes.
But you can't compromise story for dialogues. मतलब बात करे ही जा रहे हैं.
Yes.
There is no point to it. People are just being witty constantly. They're just talking in humor and wit.
Yeah.
All characters can't be witty, no, in your life.
Yeah.
If you are, 2 characters can be, one can be completely dumb. So while Aaron Sorkin is like somebody I
The
totally
king, yeah.
follow,
Yeah.
but a little later I did realize that all his characters sound the same. They're
Yes.
all witty, sharp, fast,
Yeah.
and they're just like running
Yeah.
through the film. So I mean, he has too many good things. This is just one observation which I felt I should not do.
Yeah.
You know.
You spoke about how different people, there are not many people who know how to read a script and imagine, but isn't it so subjective? Like you could read, two people could read the same script and imagine two completely different films
Yeah.
in their head. So
Yeah.
how does a screenwriter make sure that what they are writing is translated to the best? As you said, one of the ways is to make it as descriptive and as novel-like as possible,
So, I mean, it's
playing
not
to the
that
studio.
difficult. It needs to be done economically. You can't just keep going on saying everything you want. But people say what they want, then we know what that person
Yeah,
wants.
yeah.
That's basic. Other than that, like I said, before you're pitching it to a studio or a director or an actor, have a run with your friends, family.
Yeah.
If most of them are getting it, you're safe.
Yeah, yeah.
If all of them are thinking कि यार ये तो अलग है,
Yeah.
then you have to look it. कि
Yeah,
मतलब
yeah,
it's not clear enough. And the most important part was like, you know, if you're having the urge to defend your script when someone's giving you feedback, you should not.
Ah.
Because that means that there is something that has not been understood. You can't keep saying, but that is there, but it is there on page 36. No, but it was there on page 15. No, before he came into the room, see, I've written that. Clearly, they have not understood what you've written, which means there is a disconnect between what you think you've written versus what is coming across.
Okay.
You cannot defend your script. Go home, your defense is rewriting.
Okay.
You know, the minute you start arguing, you're putting off people, whoever
Yeah.
you have called for feedback, because they're like, कि यार अभी इसको मतलब debate चाहिए.
हाँ.
You know.
इसको feedback चाहिए ही नहीं था.
हाँ.
And so you admit that there is no way you can keep your own perspective on this script. Like eventually we get so bogged down by it, you can't look at it from a third person's lens anymore. You need that third person to come and tell you. As you said, it could be whoever, a producer, as you said, driver, maid, whoever
So
it could
I
be.
don't normally lose perspective on what I've written unless I get caught up in the circus of production house, platform, 3 teams of feedbacks, 3 rewrites, 4 rewrites, 5 rewrites, pilot is still not, then I lose perspective. And then I don't know whether what you're saying is good or bad.
Ah.
Then I'm at a point where I'm like, you want it like this, I'll write it like this, but I don't know whether it's good or bad. But then at that point I leave.
Ah.
Because I am here to write because I like writing.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not here to write because, you know, because someone's held a gun to
Then
my
they need
head.
a typist, they don't need a writer. Yeah.
So if I cannot, if I lose my own judgment on something, then it's time for me to leave.
Ah, okay. Fair enough.
Or at least it's time for that thing to go in the cold storage and be revisited a long time later.
Lovely.
Yeah.
But it's also the norm. I've heard so many people say we don't have perspective over, even if they're writing without so much feedback. This is one of the rare times where someone has said, no, I make sure I have
Yeah.
a perspective or judgment on it. Otherwise, there's no point. So you spent about 3 years doing this,
With
spec
the-
script
yeah,
reading
yeah,
and all, and then
yeah.
you said it's time to
Yeah.
move on. As you said, you like once you got something,
Yeah.
mastered something. But during this time, were you writing your own stuff? Did you
Yeah.
have something
I've
on the
been
side?
writing my own stuff all the time. Like, matlab, since school, college, through my ADing, like on Fitur, we worked together. Chetna, who was our first AD, has seen me so many times sitting on set writing my own thing because we were waiting.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, lighting hua hi nahi hai.
Yeah.
Or somebody's not come. So I used to keep
Or
writing.
cloud or
Or
sun.
cloud cover or freezing cold or I don't know what. Or red hair is not red enough.
Futur said.
Yeah.
Lovely. So you were constantly writing,
Yeah.
and that's what. And then, of course, you met Anubhav Sinha,
Yeah.
and then Thappad happened.
Yeah.
Lovely. So that's a fantastic journey. So that was a lovely insight into the films that you've done. And they were such varied genres of films.
Right.
So far as the writing is concerned, the genre has been a little limited, but do you see
Yeah.
yourself, of course, writing different genres in the future? And what interests you to write?
So for me, like genres to watch are different
Huh.
than what I maybe write or what I get to write. I mean, I love thrillers. I love horror. I'm a huge horror buff. Although I'm very scared, I still like do that to myself.
So then, is a rom-com easier to write? And
No.
is that something?
No, it's too difficult right now to write a rom-com because there are no conflicts.
Ah.
There are no conflicts to justify a 2-hour Why can't they get together?
Okay.
You know, and I'm really in the search of that conflict which can give me just a 2-hour film.
Sure.
You know, not like you're going to live off it or something.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of, then you started with Thappad, and of course you spoke about Jigna Vora's book, which we'll come to in detail later. But let's talk about writing technique a little bit. Where does one start with? It's of course it starts with some kind of a germ of an idea.
Yeah.
And for 2 minutes, if we talk about not someone you're writing for, but
Right.
suppose this was your
Right.
thing to write, and where would you start?
So for me personally, it begins with like some visual in my head, which doesn't go for a while. It could just be an image of, you know, like for instance, a restaurant that's been shut for 7 years and nobody knows why. And you know, you're just stuck with that image, that thought in your head. Or it could be about a character that doesn't leave your mind. You know, a girl who permanently lives in a hotel. Why? She has a house in Mumbai, but she continues to live in a hotel. What's wrong with her? So stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, from there it starts building. And I allow myself a long rope to live with all this. I am in no hurry to start writing because I have been in a hurry in the past, and you get frustrated and you give up on that idea because it's just not cooked enough in your head. You
Got
know,
it.
you get to your laptop too soon. You want to finish it, you want to get it started, you want to get it to a place where it's at least a pager, 2-pager, 5-pager, where you can quickly show it to people, and it's not ready enough in your head. And you pushing and pushing and pushing, you will abandon that idea.
Yeah.
You know. So I have stopped doing those errors now. I let it cook in my head, go in different directions. Also, I do not give anything until I am feeling very happy with it.
And speaking to those who don't exactly know, what is an ideal length for a 2-hour film, according to you?
There's no ideal length. It depends on the genre story.
And you mentioned Aaron Sorkin, because his dialogues, his dialogue
so
heavy scripts, of course,
heavy
go longer.
scripts
but
go longer
yeah,
because
yeah.
it's verbose. On screen, they go faster
Yes.
because you're talking.
Yes.
You know, it's flying. Also, it's more engaging.
Yes.
Watching dialogues, watching a courtroom drama,
Absolutely.
watching people fight, argue, more engaging
Absolutely.
than watching someone like
Walking
sit
along the
down,
street
cook a
and- yeah,
potato,
yeah,
eat it,
yeah.
you know, all that.
Yeah.
So,
So
you'll have
what
to
is your
figure what the
ideal
time.
length?
So, I mean, I honestly don't think a good script needs to be beyond 95 pages, max 100.
Yeah.
If it's less, better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's tighter,
Yeah.
basically. Let's talk about character for 2
Right.
minutes. I remember we spoke a long time ago on the phone, and you mentioned that, like, if the scene does not move the character forward or the plot forward, then there's no point of that scene. I remember you telling me that. So let's talk about character. How does one develop? You have an idea. Now, some ideas you say start from a character,
Yeah.
but some don't. Some start from a restaurant, some start from a
Yeah.
hotel.
Yeah.
Then how does a character get birthed from that?
So, if you have started from a plot, the plot would ideally tell you the kind of people it needs. If the plot has desperation, obviously your character needs to have desperation. Now, what would a desperate person look like? What would be his or her world? What would be a profession conducive to that desperation? Or what would be a family which can either complement or support, or oppose that desperation? So, if you're working from plot backwards, if it's a murder mystery, obviously why the murder has happened will tell you the kind of person your hero or heroine is, or the kind of person that they're dealing with in order to go kill someone, or find someone, or fall in love with someone who has killed someone, all of that. But I feel like my biggest point for character is, I feel people respond to characters more than even the plot sometimes. They are willing to forgive you a scene or two which may be boring, or a song or two which may not be needed, if they're in love with that character.
Yeah.
More so for a series than a film.
Okay.
In a film, in the first 10 minutes, they need to be with your character, I feel. If they are not with you, or if they feel like, yaar, is samajh mein nahi aa raha hai, kya hai, matlab isko kya chahiye, then it's difficult for them to sit through. Or if they feel like samajh to aa raha hai, lekin I don't like him or her, then again you've lost them. In a series, on the other hand, you have time.
Yeah.
You can start with them hating your guy, but it has to be some strong emotion.
Yeah.
It can't be like, then they will
Indifference.
switch off and
Yeah.
go somewhere else.
Yeah, of course.
But even if they hate your character, there is hate there
Yeah.
for them to go on. So in a series, you have a longer leeway. You have time. You have different ways of engaging them with characters. In a film, it has to be quick. So I tend to go for, like, for instance, for Thappad, it helps to take an example.
Yeah, of course.
We had a slightly difficult message to send down the pipeline that, even one slap is not enough, which a lot of people will have trouble swallowing.
Of course.
So we felt like the character needs to be as relatable as possible. Let's not make the character also difficult to digest.
Yeah.
Like, we started off with a feisty woman. We started off with her arguing ki why this and why that. And we're like, the more difficult as a person she is, the more the message is going to get ignored.
Yeah.
So let's completely focus on how this pill is going to go down with a spoon of honey. So let's make the character the honey and so that's how it worked out. Because there we had the story first. We didn't have the
Lovely.
character first.
Okay.
So shaping Taapsee's character was based on that. Similarly, shaping Vikram's character, her husband, even though he is the guy who has slapped, okay, he's also the guy who she chose to marry. So what was it about him? It can't have been so obvious, right?
Yeah.
कि मतलब देखते ही पता चलता है ये wife beater है.
Yeah,
It can't be that. There must be romance. There must be love. He is charming. He is successful.
Yes.
He is a boy of today.
Yes.
He's okay with her not being able to cook.
Yeah.
He's okay with her wanting to dance a little bit. She's okay for moving to wherever he gets to move.
Yeah.
So they have a fairly metropolitan kind of life. So he can't be obviously a guy who dekhte hi pata chalta.
Yeah.
So there have to be minor hints thrown throughout. So all of these things are very like discovering along the way.
Yeah.
So I used to keep fighting with her saying कि ये तो बहुत अच्छा लड़का बनते जा रहा है. Like, why would she leave him? And he's like, no, the whole point is the slap.
Yes.
We are not showing that he's evil.
Yeah.
We are showing that he's entitled. And that entitlement ka sense has led him to do what he did.
Yeah.
That is the point. He's not hateable or anything like that.
Yeah.
So we have to arrive at that balance.
That's why you differentiate between antagonist and villainous, because then you have a Gabbar who's like out and out villain, but then you have this guy who has to be a little grey, only then the story makes
and
sense.
Anubhav was very right, because like if he was that, then leaving him is not a no-brainer. Then what's the discussion?
Yeah. Yeah.
मतलब the audience would be agreeing कि हाँ छोड़ ही दे उसको.
Yeah.
तो interval में खत्म हो जाएगा सब कुछ.
So when you mentioned you start from outline, it goes into screenplay. Sometimes outlines can also be long. Where does the thought towards 3-act structure start coming into, or you first just write the story, let's see what happens, or is there a structure to it initially?
You start writing, and since you kind of know it in the back of your head, there is a certain rhythm in your head, that by the time you have reached a certain beat in the outline, you are like, okay, you're already 15 minutes into the film, and you need to get the first act or the catalyst at least
Something has to
there.
start, yeah.
I mean, so that sense kind of starts building the more you write. It's never very formal, like, this is where, sometimes I do that. Sometimes I just write, this is where my first act will end, this is my second act, this is my third act, a brief description that this is the catalyst for the first act, it will end here, this is where I will open, this is midpoint. For me, midpoint is super important because we are writing for Indian movies.
Yeah, correct.
We have to have an interval. And I'd rather dictate the interval than a PVR.
Of course, of course.
So for me, it becomes first act, interval, second act, end, like that.
Yeah.
So, but that's an inbuilt thing now. And of course, in the first draft of the outline of the screenplay, it's all over the place.
Yes.
Then you have to really go back and shave it off. Otherwise,
structure.
you're like too lost.
Yeah. But that comes with, because you've read so much, it comes with that, right? It's not something we can, you're innately born with.
No, and if you try to do it like that, then you will be doing a formula.
Yeah.
You won't be allowing yourself to kind of really go outside the box, and then फिर आ जाओ ना बक्से के अंदर, वहीं पे तो आना है. But पहले घूम के आओ.
While you're writing and shaping your characters, how do you not judge your own character?
Oh, I judge them a lot. I can judge anything.
Yeah, like would you judge Vikram for what he did and what he didn't do?
So that is my biggest challenge. Okay, in most of the stuff that I agree to do is stuff that I will have the least judgment on. It's very difficult for me to write characters I do not agree with.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult. In Scoop, when I had to write the corrupt cop, I could not sleep for a week. I was like, it's going to be the same rubbish corrupt cop that we've seen 100 times. I had to really struggle to find some humanity in that person which I could connect with, which then could justify all the corruption.
But
that
which
he
might
did.
not be part of the story. So is that a separate notebook
Yeah,
where
yeah. So
I know
have
who he is,
written
but I
one
won't
book
show it.
only about the
हाँ.
cop. कि इसका बैक स्टोरी ये है, बच्चा था तब ये हुआ, उसके साथ all the justifications
Yes.
that I need to
Yes.
process the amount of crap that person is going to do.
Yes.
Okay, जिसका I think 1/4 has come in the
Yeah.
thing. मतलब even his corruption.
Yeah.
Even Hansel is like, you know, we've seen corrupt cops enough times.
Yes.
मतलब इतना ही दिखा सकते.
We don't need
So
to
we
get
were happy with that, but it took me forever to write that. Even the mean bullies in jail, you know, I had to struggle के उनका कुछ तो humanity अगर मुझे नजर आया ना, then I can latch on to that and deal with the rest of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why I find it very scary to write stuff about rape, about people who rape, about rape victims, domestic violence in the true form of it.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I can't process these people, first of all, to be able to then, you know, just treat them as characters.
Yeah.
You know, it's too difficult for me to say yes to any of that.
Exactly, and it's so difficult to get into a mindset of a character like that. And so then, how does one who is so against that write a character who slaps his wife?
So that is why then Thappad became a slightly different film in its genre, where, you know, the guy is normal, is likable. It is just his conditioning कि गुस्सा आया तो बीवी पे उतार सकते हैं.
Yes.
It is just that conditioning which took him that far.
Yeah.
And then for me, the bigger mistake of that character, or the graver error that he made, was not just saying sorry.
Yeah.
Making it about him afterwards, that I was so this and I was so that,
Yes.
and now I'm feeling like, ooh, I have a headache. So he's doing another tantrum in the morning instead of acknowledging he's running away from his action. I think that was what gets that woman to leave.
Yes.
She would have dealt with a slap if there was an acknowledgement, a sincere apology saying
Yes.
that I should never have.
Yes.
And I understand how horrible it was. Then we had a conversation ke jaun ke nahi jaun.
Yeah.
But after that, you're becoming a diva, and then,
Yeah.
you know, so to arrive at that scene,
Yes.
you know, which is
The day-
actually
the
a very
morning of-
normal thing.
Yeah.
You know, most of the times when husband and wife fight and if the man has just gone a little overboard, the next minute their head is hurting, they need a drink, they need tea, they need a massage. I'm like, dude, you just yelled your lungs out at me. What
Yeah.
about an apology?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And also, I met a lot of women. I mean, that's how I can get into that mind space.
Who've been in such a
Yeah. And men who have done whatever they have done.
And then regretted, or then they're still.
So I got a lot of calls from men who were sobbing and weeping and said that, you know, some of them have faced violence, some of them have committed violence. But there were a lot of those phone calls also afterwards.
So if there's a page for a cop which had a small listing, I'm sure there are books for Amrita and Vikram lying in your cupboard somewhere with their entire character sketch. It's not like, what details do you get into? Like, things obviously we don't see, but like her favorite flavor of coffee, her
So I pegged her as a chai person immediately for some reason. She didn't strike me as a coffee person at all.
which is the opening, the morning sequence and the cutting
also,
of the chai.
for me, it's like, you know, those 10 minutes in the morning before everyone wakes up and starts demanding your time now is very important, very sacred.
Yeah.
And I have my own ritual which involves coffee, does not involve tea. But I always felt her very chai kind of person, very relatable. We wanted to make her.
Yeah.
So the minute she becomes a coffee person, there are other connotations.
Yeah.
कि ये coffee पीती है.
Yeah.
That. So that routine was her little world, you know, which will start grating on you once her world has changed.
Yeah.
When there is a paradigm shift in that. So that was a thought. So I would pick these little details, right from what colors, because colors tell you a person's, I feel like, you know, these are all just assumptions we make. They may not be much truth in it, but someone who likes pastels versus earthy tones is a certain kind. So there was on set, the art director, a very close friend of mine, was considering putting up a Frida Kahlo painting. And I told him, I was like, see, I don't think so, because her opinions are not heard yet. this house is very much her husband's.
Yeah.
And I don't see him as a person who would even know Frida Kahlo.
Yeah.
He's in Delhi,
Yeah.
in the corporate, who's very happy to have a homemaker.
Yeah.
You know, and if she already knows Frida Kahlo,
Yeah.
which means कि उसके कोई opinions हैं
Yeah.
जो इस घर में मान लिए गए हैं, तो maybe it doesn't make sense in the beginning,
Yeah.
for sure. So those kind of things are very clear. So I was able to then speak to a lot of HODs who had these, you know, some questions that, you know, how this, that and the
Yeah.
other. So I go to like some extreme detailing.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
But then that helps you because
That just
there's a
helps me
small
see the
reference to
person.
color also
Yeah.
in the end where she
Yeah.
talks about her favorite color.
Yeah.
That's where it comes out. I
Yeah,
guess.
and I have to be able to hear that person.
Yeah.
Like for dialogue,
Yeah.
you need to be able to hear what language or like soft spoken hai या fast बोलती है या you know somebody who just states their point
Yeah.
the way it is or has a way of putting their point
Yeah.
across. You start hearing it. The more details you fill in, you start hearing, and then the dialogue becomes more natural rather than dialogue.
Yeah. Once you have that outline and you're starting the screenplay, have you ever felt the character running away from what you thought they would be because your fingers are suddenly typing, it's going well, and then, Arey, I didn't think this character could say
Sometimes
that.
it
I'm sure
happens.
that happens.
Sometimes I feel like a character, also the book that I'm adapting right now, there is a character of a cop who needs to have a outburst in like say scene 80, who at scene 60 is fully ready for it. And if I prolong the outburst anymore,
Yeah.
that outburst will have no meaning
Yes,
then. It will
yes.
have gone flat.
Yes.
So either I let him have it there and figure out what I'm going to do later,
Yeah.
or I go back and check ki why is he already ready to have an
Yes.
outburst. You know, so you have to stop and wonder what's happened, because the scene is going well and I'm saying, dude, he can just have it right now.
Yeah.
Why am I stopping? I'm stopping because I don't think it should happen right
Yeah,
now, not
yeah.
because he's not ready.
Correct.
You know, so you have to go and investigate.
So they do have a voice
course.
of their own, and you have to have a ear
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. You spoke about how it was amazing to have legends like Ratna Pathak,
Yeah.
Kumar Mishra. How do I mean, you will probably always be a mother, but never be a father. How do you write the dialogue for a father character of a daughter who's just gotten slapped? Like, how does one? I know he did a fab job, and he's done a like phenomenal job.
So the thing is, like, I always find writing dialogues for men slightly easier, because even though I'm a woman, I've interacted with more men. Also because my family was in the creative thing, I have met enough men who are expressive, sensitive, all of that. That's why I have trouble writing, the typical side of men, where, we don't express that much, we don't hug, or, we can't express everything in words.
Yeah.
Those I have slight difficulty in writing. Expressive people I don't have. Women, on the other hand, again, I struggle with a certain kind, because my mother, my grandmother, my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, they're all ridiculously strong women.
Okay.
So they are not the types who sugarcoat anything, even to the men in our house.
That's a great house to grow up in.
Yeah. So I have trouble writing the shy, the timid, the how do I say this in front of 5 people,
Yeah.
or the one who will sit close to the kitchen while the conversation is happening in the living room. I have trouble writing those people. I have not met enough.
Yeah.
But then again, like I have not met neurosurgeons in my life, but
Yeah.
you write about how they
Yeah.
talk. So then that's where your craft kicks in. That's where your research, reading,
Yeah.
the kind of stuff you've exposed yourself to in your life, outside of a book or a laptop, going to actual places.
Yeah.
Like I love airports. I actually love going to hospitals. It's just rife with so many people
With
and
stories and emotions, I
and
think, yeah.
occupations,
Yeah.
because we always struggle कि ये हीरो करता क्या है,
Yeah.
ad agency में डाले या बाप का business है या industrialist बना. What is this industrialist? Like what which project and tender and like all of that nonsense. So that then helps, the real world helps in all that. Like traveling by trains, metros, I do that.
Yeah.
I go to town, I watch a play. So just keep the antennas open, because
Yeah.
as a writer, imagination हर time काम नहीं आने वाला.
Yeah.
Real life around you is
Yeah.
going to be much more needed at times.
And how did the house help's character kind of come out? Because I think she's the only one who faces the domestic violence in the scale at which is the most severe in the film. So why was that? I mean, I'm sure the track was of course important, but how did that come about?
So I was feeling like this whole world was very like elitist, and like we were like, you know, sitting up there and talking about our problems and our evolved reactions and all, and I began to feel it all getting very kosher, and I was like, you know, ki there is a person working here. You know, what if she has a similar issue, which we have heard of before, but because our life is like rose-tinted glasses at that point, you know, we find it amusing. When she says ki today again he picked a fight with me, dropped me in the middle of the road only, did not even, and I got late and all that. At that time we are like, you know, acha acha theek hai, chalo jaldi aao kaam karo.
And funnily that scene has very light background score also. It's not treated with a lot of...
So this is also how we perceive their problems, ki inke yahan to hota hi hai. But the minute it is happening to you, it's like a completely different take on इनके यहाँ क्या हो रहा है. वो इनका उनका कुछ है ही नहीं. ये सबका है, सबके यहाँ हो रहा है. So that was a little bit of that, you know, which I felt was needed, because we can't get a. I feel one slap is symbolic for the issue that is enormously grave.
Yes.
You know, and we have to see the other side a little bit at least.
It's great that we're getting so many insights into Thappad, the characters, how they were shaped. Clearly that movie has a voice, it's trying to say something. How do you put out a message like that without it being too preachy? That's a big challenge that writers face.
Yeah, that is true. So, but you know, that has to be an entire ecosystem around you. If your producer, director, all of their mission is to not be preachy, it's easier, you know. But there are some who want to make a topical film to have a certain kind of audience, in which then you would have these long monologues, and it would become very, very expositional and preachy. यहाँ पे nobody's intention was to do that. You know, we had kind of, what do you call it, internalized the message that we had. And you know, I always give this example to a lot of the assistants who come with me. I always tell them that if you go to a doctor's lounge or if you go to a court, you will not see them talking about their cases, or you won't see them hear them talking about their work. They will all still be talking about, yaar wo nahi ho raha hai, maine ye insurance, वो गाड़ी, इसका EMI, they'll be still talking about everything general, like the rest of us who do not have specific professions. Similarly, if a film is about something, people are not talking about that. It's too boring, you know. They are going on with their regular lives with that one issue which has disrupted their lives. Even after the disruption, there will be only a few conversations dedicated to it. The rest of them will be either about moving on, or they will be either about going back, you know. So that was very clear for us in terms of how we want to script it.
Moving on to, say, Scoop, where things must have been such a different thing. Now you can't really, although you did mention that the book starts when she enters jail, the character enters jail. So there was a lot before that. Was that easier to craft because you had something to go by, or more difficult to craft because...
No, that was easier to craft for me, actually, because so even though the book starts with her going in jail, she has written a lot about her earlier life. But what was most interesting was about what she's written when she was working as a crime reporter, and all the stories she had covered and the hoops she had to jump through, and how competitive it was, how she had built certain relationships along the way, how the same relationships were looked at in a different lens later on. So for me, that was very exciting to work with. Both me and Hansel sir were excited about the newsroom part of that story more than the jail. Both of us were incredibly nervous about the jail part. A, how to make it look different, and B, because once you're in the jail, the story just stops, right? Because then you're going with her suffering, and then at one point she has to like hit back and stand up and find the strength and all of that. And to be very honest, there is nothing like that. You don't find anything like that over there. So you just make up these scenarios in narrative, okay, you know, ladke ke wajah se kuch and stuff like that. But it's in real life, you don't. You just take it until you can't, and then you go numb, and then you just wait and pray that justice will prevail somewhere, you know. So that part was necessary also because we had to keep the story running after she went to jail. There had to be something happening outside of jail, which can't just be her family crying. Every time we cut to them, they're like, "Arey babu, kya karenge?" It had to be a character like Imran who is figuring out what went wrong, what went down. Also, he is not going to turn into a complete sleuth and just start massively investigating and cracking all these things like, ye hua, wo, nothing like that. It has to be realistic. He's an editor. He is not going to suddenly just chase her case. So, he would have to come up with theories of what happened. So, that's the character which would keep it alive. Now, if we have to get interested in that character when our protagonist is in jail, we need to build him up from the beginning. So, the beginning has to be equally interesting for it to then run parallelly with jail. You know, and to keep that activeness in a story. Otherwise, a location kind of stops you. You know, life comes to a standstill in jail. Ki bas, ye yahi hai abhi.
And speaking of activeness, isn't it important for a protagonist also to be active? We have stories where if the protagonist doesn't do anything, you're just like, ye to kuch kar hi nahi raha hai. Now, how do you craft a story where the protagonist is in jail? She has to rely on others around her to help her out. There's a lawyer character, there's a family, there's the editor. How does one then, I mean, they are becoming then sub-protagonists and helping her out, right?
So, I mean, there are two kinds of being active, right? One is physically. One is actually getting up and doing things and making the story move. The other one is internally realizing things or figuring things out or finding your own strength, finding your own flaws, finding courage in the face of something that you have been scared of all your life. So in the beginning when she is bullied, she is shocked because she never expected this. She is called as a Don's girlfriend, didn't expect that. Eventually, she finds the courage to stand her ground when somebody tells her to sabotage somebody else. And she's like, I'm sorry, I can't do that. You know. So, this is movement for her. And since she's a protagonist and everything hinges on her finding the strength, this movement is enough for that. But physical movement has to keep happening because self-realization can only go down that far with an audience. So the physical movement of the plot was then given to Imran and the other journalist character who are trying to piece various things together and give us a theory of what could have possibly happened why she is inside, because we don't know yet. We have no idea why she was arrested. We have no idea who actually killed JD.
You all spoke in an interview very openly, you and Hansal sir, about how it is, we have very clearly said that this is not like it's inspired by true events, it's not going to be perfectly accurate, and you mentioned also that you want to make it entertaining, and which is why some of the reasons. So speaking about other biopics also, how true are they to the story? How different do you have to be to make it a little entertaining? Because we all know normal life is not as entertaining as a film, so we have to enrich it in some way.
So, I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but in my personal experience of assisting on Dangal, of writing Scoop, which other biopics have I been part of? Not many. So, in my personal experience, I would say that most of the time the effort is to send a good message through the film, through the life of that person who has lived it. In that way, I feel the responsibility is towards getting that character as correct as possible. At the same time, we can't service the character in the most honest way because that character's story is bigger than that character. For instance, in your Chak De India, the impact that he has on the girls is bigger than his own redemption. And the redemption partly happens because the impact is so big, you know. So you have to at one point leave the real person behind and carry on with your story. It's easier if the person involved on whose life you're basing something is with you, so that, you know, they can weigh in and say that, you know, this okay, or, you know, this is going too far, stuff like that. But if the person is no longer there, it's even more difficult because that person is not there to fight, defend, say, agree, whatever. So that responsibility is a little heavier. Plus, you have a responsibility to deliver a entertaining product at the end of the day. You know, something. I'm sorry, I called it a product.
No, but at the end of the day, it's a work of art. So you have it's straddling two things. It can be a bit of a tightrope walk. And have you been part of rooms where maybe he was narrating to someone, or did you have to narrate to them? How does the art of narration?
No. I cannot narrate. I think writers should not be made to narrate.
Oh, really?
Because, I mean, see, if it comes naturally to you, if you think you're going to do your script service, then please, by all means, ask for it. But we are writers, you know, we write on paper. Things make sense to us on paper, on laptops. Nowadays, a performance is expected.
Yeah.
Okay? And there's good reason why I stopped acting. I'm not going to perform for anybody. Ideally, for me, I prefer reading myself because a narration is a version of that script.
Okay.
I feel it's not really the script in its purest form.
Sure.
It is somebody's voice who chooses to elaborate on something, who chooses to emphasize something else, who chooses to run past something else, and all of this depends on the reactions that they're getting in the room. If someone is yawning, you're going to hurry up. If someone is interested, you're going to suddenly start elaborating on something.
Yeah.
You know, if someone's checking their phone, you're going to like, chalo, khatam kar do.
Yeah.
You know, if someone is like, acha kya hua, then you're going to like,
Yeah.
so it's not honest.
Yeah.
It is a performance. You know, if someone has to gauge truly what the script is worth, you read it, then you will know what you're liking and not liking, what you're understanding and not understanding.
Sure.
You know, that's what I feel.
Fair enough. You mentioned that you were a control freak, and you know, you are a control freak. Does that ever make you want to say, you know, I've written this amazing thing, I think I should only direct it?
No. I mean, we choose where we want to control. You know, just because I'm a control freak, I'm not going to be like, I want to run my house. I'm happy to let my mother-in-law run the house. It helps me, it helps her, it keeps peace.
Yeah.
But having said that, the temptation is there,
Yeah.
not for the things that I have written so far, but certain stories that I feel like I would like to test waters with me directing myself.
Yeah. But don't you think this is a rare outlook, because there is this whole thing that write kiya to abhi hum hi direct karenge, kind of a feel or a vibe that a lot of writers have today. Like very few are only pure writers, or is that changing?
That is true. Very few are only pure writers. But I mean, there are too many reasons for it. You know, you can't boil it down to one or two reasons. Sometimes it's because, you know, you've been writing on spec, you're not getting something made, so you're feeling like मैं ही कर लेता हूँ.
Yeah.
Sometimes you actually want to become a director, लेकिन chance नहीं मिल रहा है, script नहीं मिल रहा है, actor नहीं मिल रहा है, तो मैं खुद लिख के बना देता हूँ.
Yeah.
The smallest reason for it may be that a writer is unhappy with the way the material has shaped up in the hands of someone else. That would probably be the last
The
reason,
easiest
you
reason.
know.
Okay. And because of this, is writing changing in India, where we are finding people? There's also now representation when it comes to writers. The writers now have agents. Writers now have managers. Is that a wave that you've seen as a positive change?
So I had agents, and then now I don't. So I'm not necessarily the person to say whether it's positive change or not.
Can I ask why?
So I feel like I know myself best. I know what I want to do. I know the doors I want to knock on. Plus, since I had worked with a producer as a creative producer, I know how to negotiate. I know contracts. I know tranches. I know what I'm worth.
Yeah.
A lot of the times I feel like, you know, someone pegs you a bit too high or a bit too low, and then you end up ruining relationships and you end up not doing stuff you want to do, which is just so counterproductive, you know. So since I know all of that, I hire a good lawyer and I go ahead with it.
If a writer wants to kind of tread the path that you tread, they want to be a writer, would you advise them first to take the AD route that you took, learn?
No, I think everyone's journey would begin from whatever point it would begin from. The only thing I would say is that the only way to become a writer is to write. You can't sit in coffee shops and talk about it.
Sure.
You know, you have to sit at your desk and write, wherever that desk is.
And get it wrong first.
Get it wrong, get it right, whatever the hell it is. Every day you need to get up and write to become a writer. You know, you can't become being a hustler and a pitcher is not becoming a writer at all. So that is my first thing. And secondly, I think reading multiple things, not just fiction, non-fiction, having other interests in your life, you have to have bags to borrow from.
Sure.
You know, like trunks and trunks of stuff to use from. If you only have your house where you live and one locality in which you are and those friends, that's it. Then you're going to derive from movies you have seen, from books you have read, you know.
That's not enough
That's
to
just
derive
that
from.
much.
Yeah.
I mean, your whole life, if you want to be a writer, I mean, like everything is your textbook, no?
Yeah.
So live a little.
What's the future for writers in India?
Oh, I think it's fabulous because people need content. People right now don't know what content will work, which is why there is this sluggish pace. But they still need to create content to be able to then put something up on their platforms and on the screens. So I think writers will are the only thing I think which is which really needs to change is the writer salaries in terms of with perspective to the money spent everywhere. It has to be in keeping with that.
Sure.
It can't be something.
And to other technicians also.
Yeah, overall, in the scheme of things, it needs to make sense.
Yes.
What writers are getting paid.
And it's not making sense right now.
No, not necessarily at all. It's always about, but this is a passion project. This is a labor of love. But I'm like, this is my labor also, na?
Yeah.
Love to hai.
There's a bill to pay.
Yeah.
So we spoke about writers. We spoke about working as part of a team. Do you feel there is a culture of ghostwriting where people are, told to write something, not given credit for it?
Yeah, that is there. That has been there from donkey's years.
Okay.
I do not condone it. I do not partake in it. I do not. I have never been a ghostwriter. I do not employ ghostwriters. I think it's a fairly exploitative way of working. If you are hiring people to work with you, they need to be paid. They need to be given due credit. They need to understand what their role is in the process. They can't be said that you're my assistant who is writing complete drafts which are going for narration and getting approved. I think that's just bullshit. I know a lot of people are doing it. A lot of people who are very successful are doing it, who are doing multiple things. They have a bunch of people writing for them who we will never know of.
Okay. And let's end on a happier note. What are some of the most iconic, like maybe Bollywood characters or actresses or anyone that you thought that, oh, I would have loved to have a take at that or a...
It has to be Khoon Bari Mang.
Okay.
I thought it was iconic. I was like, wow, there is this woman who is literally thrown to a crocodile, who comes back as this gorgeous diva, has a face-off with another gorgeous diva and goes to ruin that man. And how? I thought it was brilliant. It is the most, what do you call it, commercially whatever, you know, whatever the term that people will use for it. But I think it's one brilliant movie. Then there is Chalbaz, there is Sita or Geeta. I think I've always liked these spunky women who are, you know, given a bad hand and then they shine in this brilliant way, which is, you know, very feminine. It's not like they necessarily become men, you know, or like build an army like that movie Army, which was quite weird. But I like that they use their femininity to then undo the wrong that has been done to them. You know, I love those.
And will those movies come back in any form, you think?
I really hope so. I would love doing a Khoon Bari Mang. It's like screaming to be remade. Yeah.
Sure. So thank you so much for being a part of this. It was really, really enjoyable to talk.
Yeah, it was fun.
Go down memory lane as well as learn so many things, and I hope our viewers have also
I really
learned from
hope
you.
so.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you like what you saw, hit the like button and share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to TCP Originals.